Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Nichols and I teach Procreate. I have dozens of classes for all skill levels in a wonderful membership with a private community where I give a majority of my free stuff, my free resources, but I also give plenty out to newsletter subscribers, and this is one of them. So if you want to go grab this set, it is a fabulous mixed media brush set. It is combining some of my older brushes with some new brushes, so you will recognize them if you have some older sets. But I wanted to keep them all together in one big mixed media set so they're easy to find when I need them, when I'm doing something like following along a traditional art media class and I'm using Procreate instead. I'm also giving you this file for this sort of digital sketchbook in case you want to play around in a digital sketchbook. I think I gave one a long time ago too. I can't remember now. I do have a lot of freebies out there, so definitely go check them out. And if you're watching this well into the future, this is in the 2025 freebies. So I would also grab my potpourri set, which is also a recent freebie because the potpourri set has some pastels and things that this mixed media set does not have. I do have a brand new brush in the mixed media set called Neocolor Kinda. If you look carefully, all of these are little off names. So even some of my older ones I changed. So I just added an N here on Posca. And instead of uni and uni here where it said uni, I added pen and cap. I thought that was cute. Micron-ish. Tombow like. Peggy Dean of the Pigeon Letters is letting me use her actual name of her gorgeous brushes. On Prismacolor, I added a Y, so it's Prismacolory. And the Karen Dash Neocolors, Neocolor 2, I wrote Karen Dash E, Neocolor 2 Kinda. So those are just my little fun ways to name them a little something different. Now, this is a new art medium for me, and I absolutely love it. So let's start talking about how to get different looks with these brushes. So I just opened a square canvas. I always use the color profile, the very first sRGB that is under display P3 when you're selecting your color profile. Display P3 is really vibrant and saturated, and it's a little too much for me. But interestingly enough, there is a teal color. Let's see if this shows up on camera. This really bright teal in the Prismacolor, in the Tombow, and now in the Karen Dash Neocolor 2s. I can't get it in this sRGB. I cannot get a saturated enough color, which is fascinating to me because usually digital is more saturated than traditional. Anyways, that's just the biggest color that I struggle with. So if you want to use Display P3, you can give that a try. I am giving you some palettes as well. So you're going to get, there is a Prismacolor palette that I gave away a long time ago. I am adding to this set of freebies. It's the first 24, like if you were to buy a box of 24 Prismacolor brushes, pencils, that's the palette that you would get. The Neocolor 2 palette, I have the basic palette of 15 colors. Here they are, they're fabulous. So those are this half over here. So right down the middle here, this set of 15 is meant to represent those 15 colors. This set of 15, and this is in groups of 3, pastel, dark, lush, portrait, and pop. This is some brand new colors that they just came out with, and I'm finding them impossible to find at a store, even online. They're all sold out. So those are pretty similar. I haven't seen them in person, but have fun playing around with those. They're anniversary colors. For the Tombow brushes, I made 3 brush sets for the freebies here. So I made the primary set, the secondary set, and the brights set. So that's in order like that. And there are a couple duplicates. This orange is the same and this yellow is the same. On the Prismacolor and the Tombow, if you tap on one of them and you go to cards, they're numbered correctly as well. Just in case that matters to you, I did not do that for the Neocolor. I do think they do have numbers, but I didn't bother with doing that. So just so you know that those are there. If you are a member, you're gonna get a lot more Prismacolor and a lot more Tombow colors. All right, let's take a look at some of these. We're not gonna go through all of them specifically. And I also am gonna show you how to use the sketchbook, the digital sketchbook. For the Micron brush, I do have some presets over here. Presets aren't really meaningful because they change depending on the size of your canvas. It's like a percentage thing. So you can delete those if it's kind of hard to try to pick a size in between the presets. Sometimes it'll snap to a preset. So if they're bothersome, just tap on one and tap the minus sign and it'll go away. And then you can add up to 4. So if you want one to go away and then add another one, you just get to the spot. Here I have to delete one because it won't let me add another one. Get to the spot you want it to be, tap on it and tap the plus sign and you can set another size. The reason why this is handy is you can have consistency in your work if you're going between, just like if you were using real micron pens of different thicknesses there, you can go between different thicknesses and not have to try to guess how thick. So the micron is really fun because it gives a little tiny bit of a paper bleed. And so it's a little wobbly. And for some of these, I did not adjust the streamline high so that you can still have a real good hand-drawn look, because that's one of the things that helps you get a less digital look in your digital work. It does taper a tiny bit, which Micron kind of does when you go fast. Posca is nice and thick, but also a little bit textured. If you can see that within it. It's bumpy around the edges, but also textured within. Prismacolor, I guess we can get off of black here. How about a nice blue? Prismacolor, it has not changed. So you should be able to get a nice point and also work with it on the side. And you can layer with it. All right, this kind of Neocolor too, and this mostly watery, it says with Neo, these go together. Let me show you why. So this is what Neocolors are known for. You can, like a watercolor pencil, you draw with them and then you can get them wet. You don't have to get them wet, you can keep them dry. They're very waxy, but they're water soluble. So it's just fascinating to me. It is new to me because I haven't done a lot of mixed media. And then you can choose to make the water so that the marks that you've made are completely dissolved, or keep the marks in there with the water as well, like this. So this is the look. Well, you can get the dry look or this look with these two brushes. So let me show you. So go to the Neocolor Pastel. They're considered a waxy pastel. And let's go to the Neocolor palette. Here's the Neocolor palette. I'm going to choose a mid-tone blue here. And you can see, just like when you're doing mixed media and you're rolling around like this, it's going to be thicker and thinner. But you can also have a real nice, solid surface. You can do a lighter one if you're pressing lighter. Probably a smaller. The way, if your pencil is more upright, you're going to get a thinner line. And angled, it's going to be a little bit more jaggedy. Neocolors can be sharpened, but it's kind of a waste of the material unless you save it for later. So a lot of people will use them while still dull. You can do two things. You can leave your pastels dry like this, or you can go ahead in the brush, go ahead to the mostly water, or you can go to the smudge brush with it, and it's going to give you two different looks. So let's just slightly different looks. So experiment with them. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but you can see, actually, let me mix another color. Where's my, I need to go back here. So I'm going to mix a green in there and maybe this real vibrant pink purple. All right, and let's water it down. So if you look here, and if I go to a small size, so I'm at like 7%, I can simply start to go over the top of this. Now, just like with Neocolors, if you start here on pink and keep going without picking up your pencil, it's going to push that color in. So a lot of people will keep picking up their paintbrush and putting it down in a new color area and then kind of mix them together a little bit in the end. So you can really get some fun mixing. That really blended a lot of the texture out. I left some here, but it really depends on how hard you press. And even though I've got the pink selected, you notice I can do this without any pink showing on the screen. So that is one way. If you tap, it's going to do pink. If you press hard, it's going to show that pink. Okay, but if I'm just doing this really gently, then it's just like you're using a watery brush or a water brush on paper. So if you look over here, and you can pull that pigment. If I use the same brush as a smudge brush, it ends up being a little bit more pigment that you get to spread around. So it really depends on the look that you want. And I can go to a bigger size, and I'm going to put my pencil on a color, because when you're smudging, that's definitely what you're going to want to do, and it drags that color. And then just experiment. So you're going to want to play, and experiment with these. And you decide how you like to use them, either with the smudge or the other. Sometimes this will give a bit of a look of adding white, kind of creamy. So that's why I like using it both ways. The addition of color when you're using the water brush with the brush itself could also come in handy, because some of the colors in real life for Neocolors, they look a little different when you add water, because the pigments are behaving differently than what we're using here with pixels. This super duper dark Caput Mortem, I'm not sure how to say it, is one of the new colors, and it's almost black when you're using it. And then when you smudge it, or when you get it wet, it's really vibrant, really gorgeous, but deep purple. And it's a little different than this. And then, so you could try to pick maybe a little bit more red and then smudge it and try to get a little bit more of a new color in there that makes it look a little more accurate. But you don't have to go for perfectly accurate here. And this green also, the new green, when you add water to this, it just brings out all this yellow. It's really gorgeous. Let's see, got to select a water brush. I'm not sure, I haven't tested to see if I can get some yellow in here. There's a little bit. I kind of made it a little more yellow over here. But yeah, play around with those. That's enough time I'm going to spend on those. Fudenosuke, I made the soft brush. So if you're familiar with Fudenosuke, this is just mostly for calligraphers, light pressure, harder pressure. Play with the size. With Procreate, if you go all the way up and all the way down, it doesn't do the thin to thick so well, so kind of keep it in the middle, and hopefully you enjoyed that. The Tombow brushes are also new, and I have 3. There's a few things that I want to tell you about them really quickly. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time like I did with the Neo brushes, but let's go to a Tombow palette. Here we go. So with Tombow, And one of the fun things about Tombow, if I were to choose this one that says multiply, Tombow, like the Fudenosuke, are made to go thin, thick like this. If I'm on the multiply brush and I go over a light color with a dark color, they merge just like they do with the real Tombow brushes on paper. Here's the problem though. If you keep going over the same spot, it gets way, 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 way dark. Certain colors are going to show you that more than other colors. And that is not what Tombow brushes do when you overlap them. So that is not ideal. But I gave you that brush. I made some changes to some settings and made that still work in case you need it. You can get this same look with the one that doesn't say multiply. So the one that doesn't say multiply is, it's not going to give you this overlapping look where you can see through, but it is going to not get darker and darker as you overlap the brushes, the brush strokes, and that is more closer to what the real Tombows do on paper. They get a tiny bit darker, which is this is getting from here to here. So those are both the same brush except for the multiply versus the not multiply, and you can get this look with this brush by going to a new layer and setting the layer to multiply. So now I can go back to this pink and go over the yellow and get the same look. I see a slight difference, but not much. So I can get the same look with a multiply layer, and then when I'm using that brush, even on that multiply layer, it's not going to do this dark, dark, dark thing. So you have those two options. Because if I'm with this particular non-multiply brush on the same layer as this pink, so here I'm on this pink blob up here. Where'd I go? Pink blob up here. Even though that's a multiply layer, it's really only multiplying the layers that are under it. If I go with a yellow on top of this on the same layer, it's not going to have this effect. I have to be on a different layer to get that effect. Hopefully that makes sense. And then, oops, I just switched to white. And then I just accidentally made a dryish one. So I just threw that in there for you in case you want to have the look of a dried up Tombow brush. Oh, hoo-hoo-ee chisel brush. That's just something fun. I bought this sort of muted green one and had fun making a brush that kind of looks like the alcohol markers. So Oh Hoo Hoo is a brand that is similar to the Copic markers. So I just made the chisel because the Tombow brush is similar to the brush end of that. I made you a big wet acrylic brush. It is streaky and it has a little bit of very slight color dynamics set on it. So hopefully you can see that on screen. So no matter how many times you go over the same spot with one color, you can still see the strokes. And I love that. This super wet painty brush is very fun. Nothing to learn about that. And then the gouache brushes, you know, just experiment. Gouache brushes are just nice and thick and somewhat opaque, and I think that they're really fun to play with in Procreate. I have a smoother one that is also a thinner paint. And I have the watercolor skinny brush. Some of these are not new, and this just gives a nice watercolor look. And you can, the blotchy one is kind of adding blotches, but you can also smudge with it if you want to get a smudgy watercolor look. And then these are two, this is not a new brush, I just changed it so it's still kind of somewhat new. And this is a real fun brush. Oops, yeah. So this one is just giving you a lot of grunge, and it kind of picks up the paint that's already on the paper. So it doesn't matter what color you have selected. If you have some color underneath, it's gonna grab that and it's gonna mix it all together and have a lot of fun creating some texture with that. Now this streaky old wide brush is a very, very revised old brush of mine that I thought would come in handy for mixed media. And this is another one that will pick up some of the color that's already on the paper. So, and not only that, but if you tap and hold and get it onto your smudge brush, it will also pull multiple colors as it passes through and bring them around the paper as well, and keep your streaks. So that is just so yummy. I could play with that for a long time. When you're doing mixed media in Procreate, think about your layers. So if you wanted to have this, my light just went off. If you wanted this as your background, and you want some white Posca on top or some Micron on top, I would go to a new layer. And that is going to help you have a paint that isn't going to get mixed in. Because a Posca is an acrylic pen, you don't want that to smudge later. Same with Micron. Micron, you don't want that to smudge later. So you're going to go to a new layer. If you do these permanent pens on the lower layer or on a painty layer that you end up smudging later, it's not going to look like it does in real life. You can do whatever you want, but if you want to keep it looking like in real life, then just do a different layer. So your new layers will be for your permanent things, and your other layers can be for your water-soluble products so that they mix together. So Ohuhu is not water-soluble, so that can be on its own layer, and probably besides Posca and Micron, everything else you could put on the same layer, or on a watery, a layer that gets smudged if you want it to smudge. One thing I do want to make sure everybody knows, if you are new to my videos, I like putting a canvas texture on, and I added a handmade paper down here, but the Potpourri brush set has 4 other canvas textures. So definitely go grab that if you want to have more options. And what I do, so I've selected that, and you can pick the size and look at the grain and just experiment. On layers that are above everything else, I pick a gray, and I just eyeball it. I go straight across. Sometimes I go a little lighter, sometimes I go a little darker, and it just depends on the texture brush itself. And I'm just covering the whole thing, all in one stroke. So you can see it right here. I'm going to keep this zoomed in here. So now I'm going to duplicate it and turn one blend mode to multiply and one blend mode to color burn. Multiply is going to apply to all your light and white colors, and color burn is going to apply to other colors. And now I just sort of zoom out, and I don't like the gray that the multiply gives, so I usually turn the opacity down as much as I can, just so I can see a little texture. And then once I get to the texture I like, then I try to match that with the color burn layer on these darker colors. So I go to the color burn opacity. This right now is showing more texture here than here. So I'm lightening the color burn layer by turning down the opacity on that one. And there's a lot of ways to do this. This is just a real simple way that I like, and it works on any canvas size because you just have the brush. But you do have to do the brush all in one stroke. And then I group them and label the group if you want to remember what brush you used. And that gives a nice texture that will apply to all the layers underneath it. Hopefully you can see it. So I have a lot out there There's speckly ones like craft paper. What do I give in the potpourri set? I don't remember. There's a canvas one, a pulpy paper one of my favorites. I made this a long time ago. A linen brush, which really gives a fabric-y look, and a watercolor paper brush. And then this one in the mixed media is more like a handmade paper, just kind of bumpy. All right, so you'll have your palettes, your brushes, have fun with the pastel brushes and stuff from the potpourri set, and let me show you the sketchbook. If you haven't used Page Assist before, you're going to need to watch this so that you understand how to use this as some sort of sketchbook or journal within Procreate. You turn Page Assist on and off right here. There are some limitations right now that I'm hoping that they fix. One of which is I can't do that overall texture layer like I just showed you. So I have some texture on the paper that you'll have to draw on top of, which means that texture is not kind of reflecting down on your work. So that's a downside, but they might fix that someday in an update, so we'll see. The new page is a new layer. So this is just a fun way to flip through your pages. You get to see one page at a time. Let me put some color on here so that you can see what I'm talking about. So I just have a little teal over here, and then on the next page, a little purple. So down here, I can toggle between my pages really easily. However many pages I have, you can keep adding new pages. This whole book behind here is the background. So it's just kind of sitting back there, and all you're doing is writing on new layers. But you can adjust the background, and I want to show you how, so you can make it unique to your preferences, like the colors and textures and everything like that. So you go to the layers panel here and go to the background. So this reminds me to tell you that even though when you add a page here, it's just going to add a layer here, you can still reorder these. And if you need more than one layer, see if you go to a new layer, right? It hops to a blank page because it's like a new page in your book. If you need more than one layer to show up in one page, you just need to group them. So I will add a stripe here so we can see that it looks different. And then if I group these two together and they're both on, they both show up as one page. So now I can go like this. So that comes in handy just for when you need to have a lot of things to show up on one thing. And, you know, just like if you're doing some pretty involved art. If you're doing a real kind of sketchbook and you're drawing some borders and you're using some Neocolor pastels and things like that, you might need a few layers. So all you need to do is you could kind of go ahead of time and group together like this, and then just duplicate that. And so you already have multiple groups, or you can just do it as you go. Hopefully that makes sense. I will link a blog post below to explain more about the Page Assist. In this group that is the background, the journal in the background, just open it and you can see here I have labeled them. So this teal is the desk color and you can change it to whatever you want. I used this linear burn blend mode, low opacity, for the pattern layer with a pattern brush that I have. I don't know why that's showing up. And that's the desk. So that's what's behind everything. This is the sketchbook itself. So I have a bit of a shadow back here. If you don't want that, just delete it. It's just a layer that's wasted if you don't really care about it. This is the journal color right here. So you can change that to any color you want. The paper itself, I don't think you can really change it because I have all of this is all on one layer. So I have kind of the look of pages over here and this little dark thing here, plus the line and some shadows. So I would leave the paper alone, but you can change the journal color, the the pattern and the background color right there, and then just kind of close it, like use the arrow to keep it closed and out of the way, and start drawing. So this will be really fun for just having fun, making your journal boxes and following along with any of the other classes that you want to do. I'm thinking about classes like things that you might not have the supplies for, but you want to follow along. Now you can. So I hope you enjoy these. The palettes are just fun. You can obviously choose any color you want. Restricting your palette a bit is a nice way to get a less digital look. I hope you have fun with this. Can't wait to hear how you like it. Leave a comment below if you experiment with it and have any questions, and I'll talk to you later.